All right, so welcome to another Batter Chat. So you can see I've got another guest with me today. Before we start the chat, I just want to quickly say if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. You can get the audio just on like your podcast platform. So go in the description of the video, and you can find all of the links to the different podcast platforms available on the market for you guys. So I've got as a guest with me, like I mentioned a minute ago. He goes by the name of Joe. Say hello, Joe.
That's going on, people. Now I'm excited to be here. It's funny how we came in contact, obviously via Instagram,
Yeah,
having a little debate over Khabib,
and I slid
jiu-jitsu,
into your
things like that.
DMs.
Yeah. No, but I'm excited to be here. I've done some MMA content before, some boxing content for Seconds Out, so I'm excited to just talk MMA because for me right now it's the best sport in the world. I'm not going to lie to you.
So what is it they actually done with Seconds Out? Is it just more on the filming side, interviewing?
Um, so I started off filming, editing videos, and over the last 2 to 3 months, I've been interviewing people. Done Daniel Dwyer, Eddie Hearn a few times. I did Chisora today on Zoom.
Oh, did
For
you?
his fight ahead of Usyk. Yeah. So no, it's going well at the moment, but MMA is just different. There's not as much politics. I like the fact that with the UFC, it's all under one roof, which
Mm.
is why boxing comes under a bit of trouble with politics and things like that a lot of the time. But yeah, I still love the sport, but MMA right now, I'm excited to just talk about that for a solid hour, and we'll have a good chat, I think.
Cool. All right. Look, listen. I've already made a video. If you haven't seen it already, check it out. I made a video about the Khabib fight, and I reacted to to his performance and the fact that he retired. That's basically the biggest story in the sport at the moment. So I just wanted to give you a chance to share your views on it before we get into the rest of the chat. So go on. Just say what you feel about Khabib and the fact that he's retired.
Yeah. First of all, what a fight on Saturday night. Who expected Khabib to be so dominant in what looked like going into it, looked like the toughest test of his career? He made him look like an opponent that wasn't even nearly ready to fight for the belt. And Gaethje is a top level opponent. We saw the way he destroyed Tony Ferguson earlier this year. And the way Gaethje was training was strong. He was looking fit. He was looking probably the most prepared we've ever seen him. Maybe mentally he wasn't there. Maybe there's things he was hiding, but he certainly looked pretty confident going into the octagon on Saturday night. But it was down to Khabib. It wasn't Gaethje's wrongdoing. It was just Khabib was that good. It was hard to stop him on the night.
Yep. And the fact that he retired, like, did that catch you by surprise?
100%. I don't know if it's just me, but I don't think he's going to retire. I don't think I've seen anyone say that he's not actually retired. I feel like I'm out on my own here, and I don't know why, because I understand and I respect that he told his mum, this is going to be my last fight. I don't want to fight without my dad. But his dad wanted him to get to 30 and 0. And you've got to admit, as much as he might have said that to his mum, it wouldn't be the worst thing ever. It wouldn't be against his religion. It wouldn't be disrespectful to get to 30 and 0. And
Mm.
like we see with the Mayweathers, the McGregors of this world, how many times do they retire, man? So for
Mm.
me, I'm not on that. I'm not on that boat yet. I don't actually think he's going to fully retire just yet, because he said that to his mum, and I agree. It's sad what's going on in his life. It's so awful for him. But no, I think he's going to get to 30. And why quit at 29, man?
But and also, it's a good point that you make, because if you think about it, like in the context in which he's had that conversation with his mum and agreed to retire, is it's pretty soon after the death of, obviously his mum's husband and
Yeah,
his old man. Do you know what I mean? And obviously he's a big part of their family. You can tell how important he is to
yeah,
Khabib by the way he talks about him, and obviously he's obviously as equally as important, to his mum, sort of thing. So it
yeah.
was pretty soon after the death of the dad that they had that conversation, and he decided
Mm,
to listen to his mum. So who knows, over time things might change and he might get the itch again. So
yeah,
obviously only time will tell. But um, look, we know what happened in the fight, and we know, Khabib walked away as the champion and decided to relinquish his title effectively because
mm,
because he's now retired. we need to talk about the lightweight division and stuff like that a bit further down in the video. And there's a lot of stuff to
This
talk
is
about
gonna
when it
be, yeah,
comes to Khabib as well. But I don't want to overshadow the Robert Whittaker and Jared Cannonier fight,
yeah,
because for me, like, look, a lot of people have said a lot of things about this fight, and in terms of how good Whittaker looked, and there was a lot of, you know, people singing his praises and stuff like that, saying this is the best version of Whittaker we've ever seen. And I don't know, I don't agree with them, and I'm not saying that Whittaker didn't put in a brilliant performance, because
yeah,
he did, and I'm not saying that he isn't an elite fighter, because he is. All I'm saying is, this is what I expect. This is the kind of level of performance I've come to expect of Whittaker after his fights. All right, he had that slip up against Adesanya, but
yeah,
before that, he was on a roll, and he was beating everyone that was coming, you know, put against him
yeah,
across the cage from him. And that fight, like Jared Cannonier, don't get me wrong. Again, he's a very, very competent fighter. But Whittaker said it himself in the preview, in the week leading up to the fight, in
he's
the interviews
better
and stuff.
all round.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he was saying I'm the better all round fighter. So the outcome of that fight didn't surprise me. His performance didn't surprise me, because I know how good he is, and
yeah.
what level he's able to operate at. So yeah, what are your thoughts on the fight and his performance?
No, you're spot on there. The only thing I will say, just to sort of play devil's advocate, I expected more from Cannonier, and maybe that was due to Robert Whittaker being so good. He sort of marginalised what Cannonier could do. But until the last round, late in the last round, that's when Cannonier really stepped up. And
Mm-hmm.
it was a shame, because he's been devastating with the knockouts recently. And for me, I don't want to see Adesanya Whittaker too. I know he was in a drought. He was mentally having some problems for the first fight. And there were things in his way. But Robert Whittaker doesn't stand out to me as an exciting, thrilling champion that you want to see every week. In fact, I'll take that back. I'd love to see him every week, but the way Israel Adesanya is right now, I'd much rather see him face a killer in Cannonier. As long as it's not like the Romero fight, I'm more on the Israel Adesanya bandwagon than the Whittaker one. So that means for me, I'm not interested in seeing that fight again. I want to see Adesanya being challenged, and for Whittaker, we know he's world class now, but yeah, it's not something that massively interests me.
So I can appreciate you saying that fight doesn't interest you, because obviously we saw what happened the first time they fought. So he effectively got knocked out in the first round, but got saved by the bell, came back out again, and got knocked out in the second. So if it isn't Whittaker, who is it in the middleweight division?
Well, right now it has to be, but I'm
Mm,
just a bit disappointed it played out that way. Look, it's not a great division. Neither's the light middleweight division. I'm sorry, I say it's not a great. Other than Darren Till, I think he's the one we all want to see. He needs to pick up a win, and we could
mm,
wait and see that. But in the meantime, it does have to be Whittaker. But the way the fight played out, you've just got to give it creds to him, because Cannonier was scary coming into it, regardless of who you are, and if you think you're better than him in an all-round way, which Whittaker did, you still have the risk of getting knocked out clean, as Cannonier has done to many
yeah,
fighters.
I think it's important to note that Cannonier, yeah, he's a power puncher, and he has the ability, he has the power to knock you out. And we saw it in that third round against Whittaker. He
Mm.
rocked Whittaker. Whittaker didn't hit the deck, but he was clearly hurt. He was doing a chicken leg dance sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? But like, I just think even if Cannonier had won, maybe I'm just not that high on Cannonier. Like, even if he had beaten Whittaker, I still would have not seen a way that he can beat Adesanya going into a
Yeah.
fight between Adesanya and Cannonier. Do you know what I mean?
And yeah, no, and in all fairness, the UFC's job is to get their champion beaten. It's not like boxing where you give someone a warm-up opponent, or you give somewhere the champion's going to win. In the
Mm,
UFC, you always put them up against the best guy in the division, and the
mm,
best
mm,
guy is
mm,
Whittaker. So
mm.
in terms of, yeah, no, that does make sense. I think if Cannonier would have won, well, it depends how he could have won, but if he, say, knocked Rob Whittaker out in the third and it did get stopped then, going into that fight with Adesanya, I feel like it would have been pretty one-sided anyway. So I
Mm.
guess in terms of competitiveness and that's how it should be. You should have the best guys fighting for the belt. It's made the most sense that it's played out this way.
And so, in your opinion, like, do you think Whitaker stands a chance? Like, what do you think the second
He
fight
does,
can be
yeah.
different?
No, he does, but I like Adesanya so much. I don't want that to play a part, because
Play a
Whitaker in
part
the
in your thought
first.
process, or play?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't want me preferring Adesanya to play a part in the thought process going into the second fight.
Mm.
But the way Robert Whitaker looks right now, it's hard to say it wouldn't be Israel's toughest test, probably of his career, because the first Whitaker we saw him against, it was drained out, it was dried up Whitaker, and now he's back on his feet again. He's mentally better than he's ever been by the looks of things. He's having, I think, his fourth kid. Like, he's happy with his family and everything like that. It's a new version of Whitaker. But I want to see Adesanya win. He's a showman. He's pound for pound top 3 in my opinion. And in terms of why you watch the UFC, you watch it to get the most enjoyment out of it as possible. And Israel Adesanya gives me more enjoyment and more laughs, more entertainment than Whitaker.
So you're talking outside the cage as well as inside the cage.
You have to put that into perspective, because the whole point we watch fighting is to be entertained. I love the sweet science of when I watch boxing. I love the MMA, those close fights. For example, ironically, Whitaker versus Till, or Shevchenko's versus Young Jacek, Shevchenko versus Young Jacek.
Okay, yeah.
I'm talking technical fights. I love to see them, but sometimes when you see an Adesanya in the octagon, it's just special, man. It's a different feeling.
Yeah, no, I appreciate what you said. I think what I find quite interesting is Whitaker isn't beating the drum for a title shot. Like, he seems pretty easy and relaxed, and he's not really fussed about who his next opponent's going to be. And that tells me that he's enjoying the process a lot more. He's not in this mad rush to get a title shot again. He's been there, he's done that. And a lot of the time when someone loses the belt, all they kind of consumed with is I need a title shot. I need to get my belt back. And since he's won, I watched earlier on today while I was at the barbershop waiting for my haircut, I watched an interview he did with Ara Helwani. And Helwani asked him the same question, like, oh, do you not want a title shot? And his answer, like, kind of showed me a switch in his mind state.
I saw the same answer on BT.
Did you see it? Yeah. Okay, so
he was on BT, but he gave a...
Oh, yeah, with the Adam Cattrall guy.
Yeah.
And he was like, I just want to prove I'm the best. And being the champion is just a consequence of proving you're the best. So he's not in a rush to be called a champion. He just wants to be the best in the division. So he's just happy to fight. He's happy to fight whoever they put in front of him. It seems like Dana White is quite hot on a rematch between Whitaker and Adesanya, just because it's a massive fight in Australia, New Zealand, that part of the world, sort of thing. So that's likely going to be the next fight. I'm not as down on the fight as you are at the moment, and I have a feeling when the fight comes around, I think you'll get more excited for it, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? And I think you just got in the forefront of your mind how the last fight went.
No, I will be excited for it, that's for sure. But just in terms of Adesanya, I just want to see him face new challenges all the time. And I know it's a different version of Whitaker, like I've said now. But I just I want to see that Till fight at Anfield. I want to see him against Jones at light heavyweight. I feel like there's other options for Adesanya. Beating Whitaker twice doesn't really define legacy. Battering Whitaker once and leaving him sort of behind you is more. He doesn't need to win again. He won in the most dominant fashion possible in the first fight. I get that he was had problems in his personal life, Whitaker. But if you're Adesanya, I'm talking from Adesanya's point of view, what do you gain from it?
And it might be hard for him to motivate himself for it as well, because he's been there, done that sort of thing. And I'm sure he's thinking the same thing as you. That's pretty much why he was probably talking about Cannonier before this fight, because that would have been a new challenge. Whereas Whitaker is just the same thing again. That was the fight before his last, wasn't it? Yeah. So he fought Whitaker, then Yoel Romero, then So 2 fights removed, sort of thing. So so look, time's going to tell, innit, what's going to happen in that division. But I'm glad you mentioned how how kind of the middleweight division doesn't really excite you so much because it doesn't seem to be a lot of challenges out there. So I'm going to use that to segue onto the next topic because we spoke about Khabib briefly at the start of this chat, and obviously now that Khabib has decided to retire, the king is dead. Long live the king. The lightweight division doesn't have a champion. So one of the things I asked you to think about before we had this chat is how would you book the lightweight division? So I'm going to go first. I'm going to give you my idea, and then you can tell me what you think. So at the moment, the lightweight division, in my opinion, is in a very, very exciting position. And the reason why it's in an exciting position for me is all of the top contenders are ready to fight. Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier, Tony Ferguson, Michael Chandler, Paul Felder, Dan Hooker, Oliveira. Who am I missing? Justin Gaethje. He just fought, but he didn't take a massive amount of damage. He got submitted. It's not like he was getting, knocked from pillar to post, like he was taking headshots and stuff like that. So he probably isn't, he isn't suffering from any lingering injuries that are going to keep him out. Yeah. So I've just named eight fighters there. And in an ideal world, what I would love to see is all 8 of them on one card in a quarterfinals.
Oh, I didn't think about one card.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to see all of them. So you already got Conor and Dustin Poirier ready to fight. You could put Michael Chandler and Tony Ferguson against each other, Oliveira against someone, and the other two. Match everyone up, put them on one card, and just have a tournament. So you have 4 fights then you've had 4 winners. The next, 3 months down the line, have those in the semi-final, and then at the end of the year, you can have a final. And the reason why I'm saying to do this is because whoever now becomes a champion, everything, whoever picks up that belt, people are just going to say, "Oh, that's just Khabib's belt. You're not the real champion. You didn't beat the man."
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So you need to have some sort of a journey to go and grab that belt. Like, you can't just take it in a fight against someone else. Like, even though, ironically, Khabib won it against Ally Quinta, who wasn't the champion. Do you know what I mean? So Khabib actually won the belt in a controversial manner. But I think because he was such a dominant champion, you need to do something a little bit out of the box to give the actual eventual champion the credibility to say, yeah, this is the best lightweight in the UFC. And for me, the best way to do that is a tournament. So that's my opinion. What do you think?
For me, there's a fantasy world and a fans world stuck in one, and then there's the real world and Dana White's world. So you've got the fantasy world, the 6-man tournament, like you just said, 8-man tournament. You got the wild card in there. You got a Dan Hooker, the one who could still win it, and it'd still be shocking if he won it. And it's almost like I say, it's a wild card, an underdog going into it. He could fight Gaethje, Chandler, Ferguson, Poirier, McGregor. They could all fight each other basically. And that's what, as fans, we would love to see. For me, it doesn't have to be on the same card. Obviously, it's best to do that, but the way UFC works, I just couldn't. I don't know why.
It's not going to happen, is it? Yeah, it won't happen.
It makes sense because the winners of all the fights will most likely be ready to go at the same time if they keep fighting simultaneously on the same cards. But then you've got the real world and Dana White's world, and think about this from a business perspective. It does make sense. McGregor Poirier for the belt, January, bang, you've got your show for champion already. And that's what could be a possibility. And I say that because obviously you got the money, you got McGregor being a champion again. McGregor being a champion is.
Yeah, that's if he beats Poirier. It's not a walk in the park to beat Poirier, but I get what you're saying.
No way, but just giving McGregor the opportunity to fight for the belt again is something a lot of people will want. And in terms of obviously what makes sense for the UFC, I think not putting McGregor in as too many risky fights, just getting into that belt, and then he's back in a way, because we thought he'd be back after the Cerrone fight, but that just ended out being sort of like a warm-up fight that led to the thing, which isn't his fault. But I feel like as much as people, and me included, would love a 6-man tournament, the likelihood is it's just going to be Chandler, Ferguson, and it's not going to be a tournament. It's just going to be the winner might fight this guy, But if there's another narrative that pops up, they might fight them instead. Like I can't see there being a tournament because
let me ask you this. So
yeah.
all right, so I've given you what I'd like to see as a fan, and I totally get what you're saying, because I agree with you. Like, it's not going to happen. UFC don't do tournaments, so it's very unlikely we're going to see a tournament. So let me separate your answer. What would you like to see, and what do you think is going to happen?
That was pretty much what I was trying to say then. What I'd like to see is obviously a tournament. I think 6-man, because
If you do
Oliveira
6-man, then how do you like? So you're gonna have 3 winners,
yeah,
right?
no,
So
it does make it more complicated. But
yeah,
Oliveira versus, I don't know, Felder, that doesn't really excite me. However, like I said earlier, the idea of having that wild card in the tournament makes it more exciting, because it's like the guy snuck into the tournament because we needed 8 people and he's ended up winning it, and now he's the champ. Like, that's a narrative.
yeah.
But yeah, like I say, what I think will happen is likelihood people will fight each other. It just won't be a tournament, and there'll be a number 1 contender fight probably, but it's not in like the shape of a, you know,
Brackets and
brackets
actual,
and things like that. It will just be the way it usually plays out in the UFC, which is title eliminators, and someone will fight for the belt. There's not going to be an interim fight, so why doesn't McGregor fight in January? Because he's such a big name, and Poirier's won since his title shot. So is McGregor. It makes sense. And if it wasn't McGregor, if it was, I don't know, Hooker or someone who's just come off a win, obviously they wouldn't be fighting for the belt. But it's McGregor, and sometimes you've got to accept it.
But there's an argument to say then, if you're not going to do a tournament, the 2 people that deserve the title fight are probably Dustin Poirier and Gaethje as the last 2 interim champions. The last 2 guys, but even though they lost most recently to Khabib,
that really would though. That really would just be the 2 men who got beat by Khabib though. As much as I agree with you, they got their shot more recently as well. I feel like Poirier's won since the Khabib fight, so Poirier could be, and then maybe a Michael Chandler. To be fair, I think Michael Chandler makes sense because he's got the hype around him. He's sort of got a lot of people will be sort of curious of how he fights, being as that UFC has a much bigger audience than Bellator, and he hasn't lost in the UFC in front of people, so it's almost like a bigger fight because they haven't seen him at his worst. They haven't seen him have a bad day yet. So Michael Chandler might sell well, and then Tony Ferguson. For me, it's out of McGregor, Ferguson, Chandler, and Poirier. They deserve it most. Not, I wouldn't say Gaethje or Hooker. They're coming off losses. But Ferguson wouldn't be a bad shout either, to be honest.
I think what will happen is basically Poirier and Conor McGregor for the title, and then I think they'll match up Tony Ferguson, Chandler, Gaethje, and one other, and whoever looks the most impressive in those 2 fights will basically be the number 1 contender. Whoever seems like is going to have the most hype in a fight against Conor McGregor or Poirier. Do you know what I mean? So I agree with you there. It won't be a tournament, but mate, I'd love to see it though.
I do.
Especially if they do it like in terms of like, not necessarily like drawing names out of a hat, but if they have it set up as brackets, so if what journey each fighter needs to take to get to the final almost. You know what I mean? Like the Champions League, like when it's down to the quarterfinals, you know who's going to be in the semi-final against you, and then do you know what I mean? So you know what route it's going to be, but that'd be well interesting. So while we were talking about the lightweight division, obviously Khabib has just exited the lightweight division. And on his kind of post-fight interview, he wanted to be known as the pound-for-pound best fighter on the UFC roster currently. There's been a lot of talk about Khabib being the greatest of all time. So let me ask you, if you're thinking about who your GOAT is, what is the criteria you use to determine the greatest of all time?
Are we talking? So we're talking GOAT now, not pound for pound.
Yeah, just GOAT, not pound for pound.
So for me, GOAT is not Khabib right now. Pound for pound right now is Khabib, but they're 2 slightly different things, because obviously pound for pound means they're active, and it also includes sort of more recent victories. But yeah, in terms of GOAT, I'll start with that. For me, it's still John Jones. Now, don't get me wrong, his last few fights have been nothing near like what we've seen and what we all saw when he first entered the UFC. Obviously, the youngest champion, beating Machida, like beating champions, beating former champions. Khabib hasn't really done that. He won the title off Quinta. He beat McGregor, fair play. He beat Poirier, who had been Poirier. They're great wins, but John Jones was beating champions. And these guys that Khabib has beaten recently haven't been at the level that the fighters John Jones has fought have been. And also, John Jones is carrying on, so he looks like he's going to have more time to cement that legacy. But he fought a Gaethje who'd lost, he's lost twice in the UFC in pretty devastating fashion against Alvarez and Poirier. And he's a really, really exciting fighter. He looks so good against Ferguson. But in terms of the opponents they've fought, it's still John Jones for me who's fought the better.
So your criteria of determining the greatest of all time is based on resume, effectively. Who have you beaten? Yeah.
Yeah. And since winning the belt as well, he's only defended the belt 3 times. Jones has defended it numerous times, many more than 3. And there might have been some shaky wins in there as well, but he's been around, Jones has. And Khabib sort of exploded the last 3-4 years, but Jones has been here for 7-8 years. So I think, and he's still only lost once, which was an illegal elbow. So, and technically, well, not technically, but some people think he didn't even lose. Dana White's
that shouldn't have been a loss.
So we're still talking about someone undefeated, but he's just been in the game for longer. So why should it be Khabib? I feel like in this day and age, people judge very quickly, and that's not to say Khabib shouldn't be in with a shout, but because of the explosion of how big after the McGregor fight, he becomes a bigger star. And in some ways, in some people's eyes, they think he becomes better just because he's beaten a big name like McGregor. It doesn't necessarily mean that. He's so talented, but he just hasn't done enough for as long as John Jones did. So for me, it's John Jones, and then either GSP or Nurmagomedov. So that's a fight I want to see, actually.
That's how we started talking. So for me, I think my there's so many different things you got to consider when you're talking about the greatest of all time. So for me, it's easy to forget how great someone like Anderson Silva was because he continued fighting past his
tarnished.
Yeah.
He's tarnished his legacy.
So that's the thing, though.
Well, he's been popped.
So is John Jones.
So is John. Yeah, true.
So my point is, where do you draw the line? Is it do we just judge a fighter when they were in their prime, or do we have to look at the entire career and then say, all right, that guy had the greatest career? Fair. Because even though GSP never lost as a welterweight, towards the end of his career, he was just getting decision after decision, and that's exactly what John Jones was doing up until the fight with Dominic Reyes. A lot of people thought Dominic Reyes won that fight, myself included. So, but then again, like you're saying, John Jones, for me, when he was in his prime, he was beating the Machidas he wasn't just beating these people; he was finishing them. Machida, Vitor Belfort, and Rashad Evans, and Rampage Jackson, and just just loads of names. So I struggle to kind of come up with the best way of marking each fighter on one set criteria to say, all right, where do I judge these guys? So for me, there's almost like 2 different conversations. Who's had the greatest career of all time, and who's the greatest fighter of all time?
It's not Khabib. He 3 years ago, before the Conor McGregor fight, it wasn't. He was a great fighter, and a lot of people respected him highly, especially the hardcore MMA fans. But he hasn't done it for long enough. If he beats GSP, then he's the GOAT. But he needs, for me, another name on his resume. He's beaten a Conor McGregor, but when you look at Jones, you have serious names on his resume. Dustin Poirier, no disrespect, isn't someone that we're going to look at in 15 years. At this current moment, he still might have a fantastic career, but at this current moment, he's not someone we're going to look at in 15 years and say, Khabib beat Dustin Poirier, wow. Like, but when you talk about John Jones, you do say, wow, with the people he's beat. And yeah, I don't.
I think
Pound for pound, yes, but not GOAT, man. No.
The only thing that I'll say about John Jones's career, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to diminish what he did early on in his career.
Yeah.
But apart from Machida, well, not even so much apart from Machida, but a lot of the guys, I think, apart from Rashad Evans, right? A lot of the guys that he fought, I don't know whether they were at their peak or whether they were coming over like on the other side of their peak, like Shogun and Rampage and Machida was quite old. I don't know. I have the numbers in front of me. But I don't know whether each of those guys were actually at their peak when they fought John Jones.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Whereas Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier, when they fought Khabib, they were at their best. Like that was the peak. That was the peak version of themselves. They're both on winning runs, and they both had shown new tools in their arsenal that they hadn't shown before.
Yeah.
But I think my GOAT right now is GSP. Simply because he's like all of the different things that people talk about in terms of champ status. He's done that. In terms of defending his title for a record number of times, he did that. Just in terms of just the names on the resume that he accumulated, he did that. He was in big fights. He had the star power as well. And I know that shouldn't really matter when it comes to that's... But for me, I think GSP is. It's hard to say, but I think GSP, because I'm looking at the peak version of GSP as well. Like I'm not just looking at what he was towards the end of the career, even though he never lost towards the end of his career, but the peak George Rush St. Pierre. Yeah, coming out in that karate kit that he used to wear with a bandana around his head. Like, trust me, he was a problem. All right, cool. Sorry, go on. You can say something.
No, I do think Khabib. I said joint between him and GSP, but I think Khabib's third, GSP second. I think it's just too soon to call Khabib the GOAT.
But I tell you what, though, I like. It might sound funny saying this, but I think Khabib might have had, if he doesn't fight again, I think he might have had the greatest career of all time. And I'm not. You don't have to be the best fighter to have the best career.
No. I see the.
Do you understand what I'm saying? Like because he gave us his best performance ever in his last fight. He left while he was at his peak, and there was nobody else left in the division, so he left. Do you know what I mean? So you could look at it that way as well. All right, so let's move on to the next one. So we've spoken about that. So, okay, this is the next thing that I wanted to talk to you about. Leon Edwards. So let's talk about Leon Edwards a little bit. So he's a fellow Midlander, isn't he? So where are you from originally?
Shirley, Solihull.
South Birmingham, right?
Yeah, Birmingham.
Yeah,
so I'm Leon Edwards all the way. You can introduce the topic, but I'm so biased. And frustrated, rightly so, because he's from where I am. So it's disappointing to see the way he's been treated. We'll talk about it, but
let me set this up for you, and I'll let you go. Yeah. All right. So back. I think it was June when George Masvidal for Usman. So that fight with Usman was originally offered to Leon Edwards, and that was in the height. But but that was in the height of the COVID era. There was his gym wasn't open. He couldn't train. He had a valid reason not to take that fight. One, short notice as a title fight, and two, he didn't have anywhere to train for the fight anyway. So it would have been a mistake really if he did take the fight at the time. But that was back in June, I think it was, or maybe May or something like that. I can't remember the exact timelines around it. I think it might be May or April for the fight in June. But yeah, it was around that sort of time, right?
Meant to be Woodley,
So he's meant to fight Woodley in March at the O2 in London. So since then the UFC have offered him a Wonder Boy. They offered him Jeff Neal, and then they offered him Khamzat Chimaev, and he turned all of them down because they were all ranked below him in the rankings. So last week the UFC had enough of Leon Edwards, it seems. So they decided to remove him from the rankings. That prompted Leon Edwards to say, "No, fuck that. I'm still ranked. I haven't been removed." And I think the next tweet he called out Khamzat, and within a day or two, that fight got made. Leon Edwards against Khamzat Chimaev. So what okay, so give me your thoughts on that whole chain of events to start with when it comes to Leon Edwards.
Okay, so obviously the first fight with Woodley getting moved to Vegas is not Edwards' fault. He gets 2 hours notice for the flight. His trainer can't come. That's not his fault. Then he gets offered the Usman fight before Masvidal or something along the lines of he gets offered the Usman fight, but he didn't have enough time. So his trainers were available, if I'm right, but he didn't have enough time. So he said he declined that. That's the one for me. Out of all of these, I get it's his title shot, but Masvidal took it on short notice. Conor McGregor took Frankie Edgar on short notice, and that's the fight they're the fights that Masvidal lost, but he still come out a winner. McGregor beat Edgar, and it went from one level to another because the respect you get when you fight on short notice is unreal. And even if Edwards would have put in 85% of his normal ability, he would have got credit for taking it on short notice. He would have got a bigger name because he's fought the champion. And the whole point of this sport, especially fight sports, just in general, you've got to take risks. And he should have just been staying ready instead of getting ready. He should have been staying ready anyway. That's obviously hard to talk about because it was in lockdown. No one knew at the time when fighting would be coming back. So I don't know. But then you move on to Wonder Boy, which I don't think he should have taken. And then was it who else?
Jeff Neal.
That's a mockery. Why? First of all, he should have had the shot before Gilbert Burns. That was the one I think Edwards got offered before. Oh no, something like that. But basically, he should have had a title shot before all of this. So the fact that they're offering him Wonder Boy and Jeff Neal is ridiculous. And at the start, when Khamzat Chimaev first got handed to Leon Edwards, I also agree with Leon. I know it sounds so biased, but you've got to look where he's coming from. Why would he thank fight guys when they're below him in the ranking when you should be next in line for a title fight? And if you probably sit out for 6 months, you could probably get that title fight. So it was high risk, low reward. Jeff Neal and okay, maybe Wonder Boy, but Jeff Neal, no, it just doesn't make any sense for him. He literally gains nothing if he wins that because people will still be saying, well, it was only Jeff Neal or Wonder Boy's been chinned anyway. There would have been excuses for people to run with. And then he gets offered, and then he gets kicked out of the rankings, which sort of heightens the exposure of him. So I'm glad he got kicked out only because it's heightened the sort of hype around this fight now because it's Leon Edwards is getting treated so badly. But now the big man that accepts any fight comes at Chimaev's fighting him. And if Leon Edwards still goes ahead and wins after all of this, then his point was right all along. And we've got a title contender on our hands once again in Leon Edwards. And surely after he'll be fighting for the belt and hopefully bring it back to Birmingham.
Yeah, no, I have to. So I suppose I agree with you in a sense about the fact that Jorge took that title shot on very, very short notice. But, you know, I think Leon Edwards had been given like 3 or 4 weeks notice for the fight or something like that.
Yeah.
So it was a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, no, he had time, man.
Yeah. So, but at the same time,
that's the one thing I disagree with in that whole sort of.
I think in hindsight, looking back, he probably regrets not taking the fight then. But at that time, he was the guy. Like I remember, it's not very long ago, but the division has moved so much since then that he's just kind of not been forgotten about, but he's just kind of fallen down the pecking order in terms of who's trending in the division right now, sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? Because you got Kobe Covington who beat Woodley, and Gilbert Burns is obviously fighting Usman beginning of next year and whatnot. I think actually now it's a very risky fight, this Chimaev, because he looks very, very good, but we just don't know how good he is in terms
of... It's still low risk high risk, low reward.
Yeah,
It still is high risk.
see, I'd have to disagree with you there because I think it's high reward and high
Yeah.
risk, because I think Chimaev's managed to get a lot of hype behind him in his attitude, the way he kind of carries himself, the way he
But
talks
who's
about
he
other
for?
fighters. But he hasn't fought anyone, but he's managed to harness a lot of energy towards him in terms of, this guy's a beast, he's going to be champion. It's not a matter of
Yeah.
if, it's when, like, you know, that's what people seem to think about him. That's how highly he's rated, and he's got a lot of hype around him because of that. And Leon Edwards taking this fight, if he beats Khamzat, then he takes all of that hype that Khamzat has built up. Do you know what I mean? He's literally just stolen all of that off him, and then he's undeniable. If he beats the boogeyman of the division, the one that nobody wanted to fight, if he beats him, then
No, to be fair, you've got really good point.
yeah. So there's no other way of looking at it. Do you know what I mean? Because this fight is happening in December. Usman's fighting Thingy Bob, what's his name, Burns, in January or something like that.
Burns, yeah.
They're very close together. Like that would be the next fight to make. Those two winners fight each other. Like, do you know what I mean? So for me, I think it makes, like, it hasn't made sense what's happened over the last couple of months with Leon Edwards. If I was him, I would have actually taken the Wonder Boy fight, because that's a winnable fight, and it's also a well-known name in that division. Someone that's fought for the title twice, who's been operating at the top of the division.
Yeah.
I know he's coming off a loss, but it's still Wonder Boy, and he's still got to fight. Like, the only way you can keep your name relevant is by fighting in the UFC. You can't just sit on the side.
Ortega was sitting on the side, and he come back and no, sorry, was this before he fought Max Holloway? I think he fought Edgar, didn't he?
Yeah.
And then he got injured. Max Holloway fought Frankie Edgar. I'm 100% sure. Ortega is the type of fighter, and he has done this many times. He will turn down 10 out of 15
Ortega lost to Holloway. He beat Frankie Edgar, then he lost to Holloway in a title fight, and then he's just been injured for the last year and a half.
No. I know he's been injured, but before that, he had an opportunity to fight someone. I can't remember because it was a long time ago. But Ortega said, "No, I'm just waiting for my shot at the belt." Edwards says, "No, I'm waiting for my shot at the belt," and he gets shot down just because there's someone else up and coming. It doesn't matter.
I know what you're saying. So at that time, Ortega was offered an interim title shot.
That's the one, and he said no.
Yeah, but that makes sense, because he said that division, Holloway was still the champion. He was just injured, so he was like, "Why am I going to fight for an interim title?" Because,
but it's like Edwards, he should be fighting for the real thing. So why should he fight Wonder Boy? Do you see what I'm?
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but the difference here is with Ortega and Holloway, or like when Ortega beat Frankie Edgar, there was literally nobody else that was next in line. Whereas in this situation, you still have Jorge Masvidal, who has an argument. You still have Kobe Covington, who are both bigger stars. Let's face it, in America.
No, they are.
Yeah, they just have more weight behind their name compared to Leon Edwards. So some people just have to do it the hard way. That's the same thing that Khabib was moaning about. He had to beat 7 or 8 people before he got his title shot. Like, there was a time when he was the guy that deserved a title shot against Eddie Alvarez, and the UFC gave it to Conor McGregor rather than Khabib. When Conor beat Alvarez for the belt, like, the UFC do that. They give fights to the bigger stars. They don't necessarily give it to the person that deserves it more at the time. And that's the predicament that Leon Edwards is in, unfortunately. So, but the thing is, this fight with Khamzat, look, we don't know. It's not like a shoe-in that he's going to beat him. We don't know if it could be the worst night of his life. Like, Khamzat could make it stupid in there. I just don't know exactly how good Khamzat is. But if he does beat him, then it just shows that it just stamps it, like, there's no one else left now. He should be getting that title shot, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, no, I think what you say is also true. It's an interesting debate, that one, because you've got to look at the division and where people stand in it, and that's sort of how you make your judgment. And certain situations have happened in other divisions, like with Ortega, and they might look a bit different. But ultimately, there is a fight in there, and there are some fights, depending on how you view it, that Leon Edwards should have taken. But now it's all lined up to one more fight. And if he wins that, then there's no denying he deserves a belt, the shot at the belt. So it's I guess you could say it works out well for him in the end, because this fight's going to have a lot of hype around it.
Yeah, exactly. And this is this is in a funny. It's funny saying it, but this is the biggest. This is the biggest fight of his career in terms of the biggest name he's fighting, and it's the guy that's had what 3 fights or 2 fights in the UFC, but he is genuinely the biggest name that Leon Edwards would have fought in his UFC career. I know he's
Yeah,
fought
no,
Usman before,
definitely.
but that was before when they were both kind of undercard fighters. They were
He's
prelim
just
fighters. Do you know
exploded,
what I mean?
Chimaev, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 But yeah, that I'm looking forward to that. That's in December. So all right,
Okay.
let's just quickly talk about this fight because I'm well excited about this. It's
Yeah.
happening tomorrow night, midnight
Mm.
UK time.
Yeah.
Gegard Mousasi against
Mm.
Douglas Lima in
Yeah, man.
Bellator. So I just want to quickly set this up for you, right? So I
Yeah,
just didn't even know. I didn't even know that this is happening this Thursday. Like I'm balls deep in MMA, right? I've got a fucking YouTube
yeah.
channel about it. That's all I think about. All I do, football, MMA, right? And like I was scrolling through Twitter and I saw Scott Coker post a tweet about this fight, Mousasi and Douglas Lima happening this week, and I was like, no way, because I know
Yeah.
they were booked to fight each other earlier in the year, and then COVID came, so obviously they had to cancel the fight and whatnot, and yeah, I was just shocked that the fight is happening this Thursday. Like I wasn't aware of it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I knew they had
Yeah.
rebooked it. I just didn't know it was this soon sort of thing. So that's the first point I wanted to make. I feel like the fight itself should have got more exposure than it actually has. But I mean, what do they do? Like, I'm surprised that Mousasi and Lima haven't been on, the usual kind of MMA channels and stuff like that with Chael Sonnen and I don't know, with Ara Helwani and stuff like that. I'm just surprised there hasn't just been more noise made about the fight. But the fight itself, I think it's actually probably the best fight that Bellator are capable of making in terms of their current
Yeah.
roster. So you've got Douglas Lima, the undisputed welterweight champion of Bellator, a guy that can easily slot into the top 10 of the UFC rankings in the welterweight division. You've got Mousasi, who's their middleweight champion. Douglas Lima stepping up to try and become champ. Mousasi is a guy that I've followed for over 10 years now. I'm a massive
I love
fan of
that guy. Yeah.
Mousasi. I love the way he fights, and I just love his attitude outside the cage. I love it. I love it when he gets pissed off in an interview and the stuff that he comes. I like the Dutch people have a certain sort of way of saying things that always makes you laugh. Like the humor is kind of British almost, like quite similar. Do you know what I mean? So I'm just really looking forward to this fight, and I think it's happening at midnight, 1 o'clock, so I can stay up for it and still be up for work on Friday morning. So I'm excited about that. So all right,
what channel is it going to be on?
Sky Sports Mix or Sky Sports Arena, one of them two. So it'll be on Sky Sports. Yeah. All right. So tell me, are you interested? Are you looking forward to this fight?
Yeah. No. In all honesty, I'm always interested. I think Bellator, they've made massive mistakes over the last sort of year with how they air the shows, which is why I asked you. You know, when it's on Channel 5, then it moves to Sky later on.
Mate, fucking, it was on BBC. It was on BBC last week. Was like they've got 3 or 4 channels, and you don't know where it's on.
Watching will remember. I can't remember the fight. And it turned to Peppa Pig midway through. So they went to an advert and then they started showing Peppa Pig on Channel 5. I think
that was you know who that was? That was Rory McDonald against Douglas Lima. I'm pretty sure it was.
Yes,
because I recorded it, and that's what happened to me.
So the fact that they've got it on one channel is good because people need to be able to watch it. They need to get better reach in the UK. I went to Bellator 200 back in 2018, I think February, maybe, could be wrong there.
Where was that?
You know, Wembley Arena. I can see it from my window.
I think who fought? Because I went to a Bellator.
Didn't sell out or anything. Pardon?
Who was fighting on that card?
Michael Venom Page. Mousasi was fighting.
I was there as well. Mousasi fought in the main event, and he beat someone in the first round or something.
I forgot. Yeah, he knocked him clean out. There was MVP was funny that night. He had the Avengers glove on. I remember, and he was so cocky like he always is. But no, in terms of the fight, I want Lima to smoke out Mousasi just because of. I want to see that power again, like we did against MVP. I really Michael Venom Page. I just think he needs to step up in the level of
Competition.
opponent
Yeah,
facing
yeah,
in comp
yeah.
really does. Because sometimes I just like Michael Shipman, no disrespect, but he was talking trash, like understandably, because he wasn't that great. But it's hard to act like you're the man, like MVP does, when he's not fighting the best. Like he isn't fighting the level he's at. He's not fighting that level of competition, but he's so entertaining to watch. And at one point, he was my favorite fighter, including UFC fighters. So I really think
Yeah.
he's entertaining, but he needs to step in the level of opponent. But on to the fight between Mousasi and Lima. I just think Lima's got what it takes. I think Mousasi, in fact, Lima actually, he has a loss every now and then. Like he'll go on a 4-win fight win streak, and then he'll take a loss. But I just think now he's the champ, especially. He's an evil fighter, and with Mousasi, I just don't see the same. I don't see the same hunger
Urgency.
anymore. I don't
Yeah.
see the same urgency. I don't see the same hunger. And Mousasi is, well, he's been the champion, obviously at middleweight, so we know what he's capable of. But Lima, for me, is just a different animal.
So let me just quickly tell you where I am with this fight. So personally, like Masasi is an average sized middleweight. He's not a guy that looks like even though he did fight at light heavyweight, but his body style, size of his body. Like I saw the weigh-ins earlier between them two. Lima didn't look much smaller than Masasi. I don't know how much weight Masasi cuts to get to 185 pounds. But Lima is a big welterweight. So him coming up to middleweight, I don't think Masasi will have a massive size advantage, because he did against Rory McDonald. Like he just manhandled Rory McDonald when Rory McDonald went up to 185 pounds and just made it look like a man against a boy almost. That's not going to happen, I don't think, against Lima. They both are very, very, very strong kind of kickboxers on the feet. And Lima throws, like you said, evil. I like that word, because he throws evil low kicks, and he's accurate with his punches, like we saw against MVP, unfortunately for us. But Masasi is a very, very
he's capable.
He's just a very intelligent fighter, man, and he's an intelligent kind of. He knows how to use his body. Like he doesn't look strong, but he is kind of strong. Like he knows how to hold you up against the fence, and he knows how to stifle his opponents. And he's very, very powerful in the clinch. Like he'll hurt you on the break, sort of thing. I don't know who's going to win, but I just think. I don't know. I just think this is one last strong victory for Masasi, because he's on the tail end of his career, and I think this will, if he wins this, it will show he's still at a relevant level as a middleweight, not just in Bellator, just generally around the world. Like I think this will prove a lot of where he's still at. So I'm going with Masasi. Who are you going with?
I'm going to go with Lima. To end the debate, but I think whatever happens, it is one of those fights where you can really sway to each fighter and pick some good points out, and I don't think either of us will be surprised with who wins.
That's how you know it's a good fight, because there's that element of unknown in it. You don't know what's going to happen, and that's what excites me about fights like this. Cool. All right. Well, that's all of the topics that I wanted to cover off. So before we go, I just want to quickly ask you, there's a lot of boxing on this weekend as well. So you say you're kind of primarily a boxing man. So
no. I'd say level MMA and boxing. All
right. Fine. So I'm kind of more MMA, but I obviously watch a lot of boxing as well. So Usyk Chisora, quick prediction.
Chisora needs to be really, really rough in order to get through to Chisora. Because
to Usyk.
Sorry, to get through to Usyk. Usyk hasn't fully fitted into the weight at heavyweight. I'm trying to weigh up both arguments. I've been sitting on the fence all week. Obviously, Usyk's one of the best cruiserweights that's ever lived. Chisora's been a heavyweight for so long that it's more natural to him, and the power will be something that Usyk hasn't felt yet. I'm not that guy, but I'm sitting on the fence for this one. I can't pick it. It's easy to say Usyk, but the way Chisora's been training to execute a perfect game plan, like he can't slip up for 1 second, perfect. I'd be really happy for him. But most importantly, I something in me just says this could be a shock because Usyk's first fight at heavyweight wasn't special, and it sort of not killed the buzz because there's a massive hype around this fight, but I would have expected a bit more. Maybe that is due to the way Usyk's going to feel a lot heavier, and actually being in a big fight this time. Whereas with the fight against Witherspoon, he was feeling heavy, and he knocked him out, but he didn't look that impressive doing so.
Yeah,
so
and it was Witherspoon at the end of the day, so
I can't pick. Seriously.
So for me with this one, it's just a little bit like, so obviously Usyk's going to try and use his movement, use the footwork that we know that he's got. Chisora's going to have to try and close the distance, get on him and push him up against the ropes, rough him up and try and land punches. So it's just who can execute what they're good at better, I suppose. The only thing is, if Chisora in the early rounds doesn't manage to get close to him, but does manage to kind of wear on him, put his weight on him before the referee breaks up and they go again, sort of thing. Towards the end of the fight, I can see Usyk getting tired. I just can't see Chisora knocking him out. I just can't see Usyk being there to get hit. So I can see Chisora having a strong finish to the fight, but I just think it will be a points victory for Usyk, unfortunately, for Chisora fans. And then last one, Gervonta Davis against Leo Santa Cruz. You excited about that fight? You looking forward to it?
Yeah, man, that's gonna be wicked. Obviously, out in the States, there's too many belts in boxing. It's a conversation for another day. But right now, obviously, Gervonta Davis being a super feather, I think he's going to win. I think Leo Santa Cruz has been a dominant champion, but Gervonta Davis has got dangerous power, and he's going to put on a dangerous performance. I can be sure of that. I'm confident with this one. He's a hard worker, and he gets some negative publicity, and he's done some rough things, but in terms of his fighting ability, it's elite. And don't get me wrong, his opponent's high level. It's a high level fight, but yeah, Gervonta Davis sneaks the win there for me.
Cool. I'm going to agree with you there. I think Gervonta Davis does it. I think he does it inside the distance. I think this will be his crowning moment, and this is when people are really going to start sitting up and taking notice, and other names like Garcia and Lopez and stuff, and that division and just that kind of little weight area, from 130 pounds upwards and stuff. It's going to be exciting over the next couple of years. Cool. All right. Perfect. Thanks for your time, man. So before we go, is there anything you want to plug or anything you want to say? Any Twitter or anything that you want people to follow you on?
My Twitter and Instagram's at _Joe Leigh _ So it's Joe, obviously JOE, LEIGH is my surname. That's on Instagram and Twitter. Follow me if you like. I do loads of boxing stuff, MMA stuff. I'm really trying to get into a lot more. And I'm just a fan of fight sports as well. I'm a Spurs fan. If you like football, and I'm on We Are Tottenham TV quite a bit, talking about football as well. So
did you become a Spurs fan being from the Midlands?
I was born in London. I was born in Tottenham, Enfield. Yeah, so I'm sort of fully aware of how London is. I live here now anyway.
Yeah.
So, I'm London at heart. Maybe Birmingham at heart. Actually, who knows? Love them both. Yeah. No, I appreciate you having me on, though, bro.
Cool, man. All right, cool. Thanks for your time. Thanks for watching and listening, guys. I'll catch you guys next time. Sweet.
Nice, man.